That is a Porsche 911. And if you listen to a boring car person, you would think it was the best thing ever. Boring car people go on and on and on about the Porsche 911. But why? What makes that car so special? In this video, I'm going to try to explain what the 911 thing is all about. And while doing it, I'm going to describe what this 911 is like to drive. I've identified 8 reasons why the 911 is such an icon. Now, if you're a car person like me, hear me out and see if you agree with me or not. If you're mystified by the cult of the 911, hopefully this video will clear things up. Right, let's get started. Reason number 1.
It's been around forever. You would need to be 70 years old or more to remember a time before the Porsche 911. It was unveiled at the Frankfurt Motor Show in September 1963. There it is, hiding in the corner of this image. Although it was called 901 initially, when Peugeot waved its arms and said it owned the zero number naming format in France, Porsche backed down and swapped the 0 for a 1, hence 911.
This is The Bowl by Caffeine and Machine, and it's a lovely spot to come and have a cup of tea or some food and talk about cars. Yes, the 911 really is more than 60 years old, and it's that longevity, as much as anything else, that has made the 911 such an icon today. It's quite unusual for a nameplate to live on so long. Not unheard of. Think Mazda MX-5, think Ford Mustang, both of them icons, both with their own longevity. But take Ferrari. Ferrari's mid-engine 2-seat supercar has changed badge 10 times in 50 years, from the 308 to today's 296. The 911 badge hasn't changed. The 911 has always been the 911 for more than 60 years. The Porsche 911 is such a legend, in part because it's just so familiar. So what is this 911? Well, it's a 911 Carrera, which means it's the base model. This is the slowest and cheapest brand new 911 you can buy. It costs just under £100,000, and this one has almost 0 optional extras, which means it costs less than 100 grand. I reckon this is the only brand new 911 in the country that costs less than 100 grand. So does that mean it's a bit rubbish? Well, no, of course it doesn't. In fact, it's a really lovely car. It's got a fantastic interior, really high quality, lovely materials, excellent build quality, just a fantastic place to sit. There's a sense of integrity about this car. It's such a polished, such a refined thing nowadays. Right then, reason number 2, the engine. Every single 911 since the very first has been powered by the same kind of engine, a flat 6. That means 2 rows of 3 cylinders lying flat, like in this illustration. For the first 34 years, those engines were air-cooled. Since 1997, they've been water-cooled. In the early days, very, very few of them were turbocharged. Nowadays, most of them are turbocharged. And of course, over the decades, those engines have grown in size, they've grown in power, but they've always had fundamentally the same characteristics: good power and torque, excellent throttle response, and a rousing soundtrack, all the stuff that you want in a sports car engine. But of course, the single most important thing about the 911's engine, it's not in there.
Yes, the 911 is rear-engined. There are front-engine cars and mid-engine cars. Rear-engined is the most unusual configuration there is. In fact, it basically defines what the 911 is all about. It determines the way it handles, the way it goes, and the space it offers inside, more on which in a moment.
There are still people out there who insist that's the very worst place to put an engine. Elon Musk still thinks it's a stupid idea, and they sort of have a point. The thing is, an engine is very, very heavy, and ideally, you would put all the heavy parts of a car within the wheelbase. Moment of inertia tells us that that car will then be safer and more agile. When the mass is located far from the center of rotation, like in a 911, that moment of inertia increases. Basically, if you put the heavy bit way out here behind the rear axle line, you cause issues. The car's weight distribution will be heavily rear biased. That means there's not much weight on the front, on the wheels that do the steering, and so it can be difficult to get a car like this turned into a corner. Appropriately, I'm using an old 911 to demonstrate this point. This is actually a 2.7 RS, so yes, I am using one of the best handling cars of all time to illustrate the handling deficiencies of the Porsche 911. So be it. Once the car is turned into a corner and the rear end starts to move around the bend, because all that weight is there, that rear end has a tendency to want to keep going, and so the car can spin out. Many drivers have crashed their 911s that way, particularly older ones. A 911 is basically one giant pendulum, and keeping that weird weight distribution under control has kept Porsche engineers and drivers very busy for decades. So are 911s dangerous? No, of course they're not. Even those older cars, their reputation for being dangerous is overblown. And in this modern one, like all modern cars, we've got very clever stability control systems that stop them from spinning out. Driving this car now, I'm not remotely concerned about its unusual weight distribution. The fact is, over the decades, Porsche has worked extremely hard to tame those slightly odd tendencies. The engines have moved forward ever so slightly to adjust the weight distribution. The suspension at the rear has really evolved to better contain that weight distribution. So in older 911s, yes, you do have to be a little bit careful, but in these modern ones, not at all. So why put the engine here at all? Well, despite the drawbacks, there are huge advantages to placing the engine around here. For one thing, you don't have an engine up front, which means there's a big storage compartment up there. And for another, the front of the car can be very tightly packaged, meaning the car cleaves through the air, making it faster and more fuel efficient. There's more. Putting the engine here means there's space in front of the engine for two small seats in the rear. Now, those rear seats really are tiny. They're very small. But if you've got small kids, they make all the difference. It means you don't have to choose between your sports car and your children. That, for parents, is a really big deal. Finally, what do you think putting the engine here does for traction? The engine is a heavy part of the car. All that weight is pressing down on the rear tyres, forcing those tyres into the road, meaning they generate more grip. 911s always have excellent traction. So there you go. Several reasons why putting the engine here is actually a good idea. You feel it even when you're driving a modern 911. You come out of a corner, put your foot down and bang, away you go with massive traction. It's brilliant. It's the age-old 911 way. You want to be a better driver. I know this because everybody who loves cars wants to become a better driver, and I'm going to help you do just that. This is Steve Sutcliffe. He's maybe the best driver that car journalism has ever produced. He once lapped Jenson Button's Formula One car around Silverstone within half a second of the official test driver. He's that good. Steve has written the definitive guide to becoming a more skillful, safer, faster driver for the intercooler, and I'm going to share it with you completely free. All you need to do is click the link and enter your name and email. Over 3 weeks, I'll share Steve's comprehensive guide to driving like a pro straight into your email inbox. So click the link, fill out the form, and you'll be on your way to becoming a better driver.
Point 3 is a big one: racing heritage. Get this, no other nameplate has won more races around the world than the 911. It is the world's most successful racing car. It's been winning races and championships for decades. Classics like the Targa Florio, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the Daytona 24 Hours, the Nürburgring 24 Hours, even great rallies like the Monte Carlo Rally. The 911 has won them all. It's still winning important races to this day. It would take hours and hours to explain the 911's racing history in full, but all you need to know is this: racing has always been vital to the 911, and the 911 has always been excellent at racing, and the road cars are better because of it.
Point 4 might be a contentious one, but bear with me because it's important. Its image. Even if you're a die-hard petrol head like me and you think you're buying a 911 for all the right reasons, there'll still be one small part of you that will be quite pleased to be seen by other people driving your 911. Now, there might be a small group out there who see you in your Porsche and think, tosser, but most people will admire you. Driving a 911 shows you've done well in life, and most people quite like that. But maybe there's more to it than that. As we discussed earlier, the 911 has a bit of a reputation for being a touch dangerous, perhaps, and so maybe by driving a 911, you're demonstrating that you're a bit of a daredevil. Is that part of it? It might be. Now let's do point 5, and for that, we need a clip from the Intercooler podcast, which is available on this YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hold fire one moment. What I haven't told you yet is that the white 911 I'm driving in this video is my podcast co-host Andrew Frankel's long-term test car. He's been using it as his everyday car and knows it inside out.
How usable has your 911 turned out to be in the few months that you've had it? I mean, does it ever annoy you? Is it totally effortless in just normal driving?
No, there's nothing annoying about it because it is, what annoys me about cars that don't ride properly annoy me. And the ride in this car is firm, but it's not harsh. And it's a crucial distinction to make. The other thing, which is fantastic about it, and I accept this will be the last car I ever drive, which will be like this, is I don't have to press any buttons at all to turn off lane keep assist or speed limit warning or all this other stuff. It's just completely get in the car and go. No, I can't really think, and maybe that's the answer to the question. Maybe it is because they just don't impose those sorts of limitations on your life that other sort of junior supercars would.
So the point is you can use it pretty effortlessly every day and it's fine. It's not going to annoy you. And it's quite unusual, as you say, for a sports car or junior supercar to be able to do that.
Another thing which is spectacularly, wonderfully not annoying about it is the anonymity it affords you.
Yeah.
Nobody looks at you. I can drive the length and breadth of Britain. You could be in a Golf in the 911. The other thing is you can just leave it anywhere.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about it.
And he's absolutely right. The 911 is really easy to drive. It's effortless. It's got all the modern comfort and convenience features you could possibly want. But come on, it's a sports car. It's supposed to be fun to drive. And that's point 6. The 911 is great to drive. It's got all the handling attributes of a brilliant sports car. So the ride is quite supple. It's not horribly bumpy over an uneven road. The body control is fantastic. So you don't worry about the car lurching up and down. It's just really well contained. We've got tons and tons of cornering grip, really good steering. It's agile. This is the kind of car that you feel connected to. There are lots of cars that you try and get into a flow with, into a rhythm with, but you can't because you don't know what's going on beneath you. You can't feel the grip. You have no sense of how the balance is shifting in corners. But in this car, in any 911, you feel connected to it. And it's that connection that makes this car and any car fun to drive. And even though this is the baby 911, the least powerful one, it's really fast. It's got proper performance, partly because this engine is twin turbocharged. So you've got loads of power, loads of torque, and it's a really lively, responsive engine that revs out all the way beyond 7,000 RPM with loads of energy. And it even sounds great as well for a modern turbo engine. This one has got the PDK paddle shift transmission, and it feels like a racing transmission. It's so quick, instantaneous, but then in normal driving, it's really smooth. So the powertrain, the engine and transmission are just superb. Now then, point 7 is one of the most important ones, and that is the 911 is affordable. Don't get me wrong, not all 911s are affordable. In fact, you could spend more than £1 million on a 911 if you wanted to, like this one, a 993 GT2 up for £1.15 million. And brand new 911s are expensive. The very cheapest one you can buy right now costs £99,800. By the time you've paid to have the little 911 badge on the back painted black, that's a 100 grand car, seriously. But the point is, you do not have to spend big money to buy a 911. Even £10,000 will buy you a perfectly serviceable 996. Spend £20,000 and you basically have your pick of 996 Carreras. That's the model that was on sale between 1997 and 2006. £20,000. So we're not talking mega money for what is a thoroughbred sports car. Buying a 911 is one thing, running one is another matter altogether. In fact, lots of people have lost their shirt on maintenance bills on their 911, so you do have to be careful there. But the point is, you really don't have to spend a fortune to buy a 911. But what if you do have a lot of money to spend on a Porsche 911? This is JZM Porsche, just outside London, one of the country's leading Porsche specialists. I'm here to make my final point, point 8. Car bores love the 911 because of its variety. As we've seen, 911s span 10 grand to £1 million or more. They can be minutes old, they can be more than 60 years old. They can be the quintessential everyday sports car like the white Carrera I've been driving today, or they can be fearsome track day weapons. They can be monstrous all year round supercars. The 911 does it all. These are the 911s the collectors get worked up about, the GT3s and the GT3 RSs. These are the track day models, the ones with the really special engines. You want to use your sports car all year round, right through winter. That means you probably want four-wheel drive. You also want crushing performance. So you need a 911 turbo. This green car and the silver one here are both 911 turbos. Basically nothing is faster down a wet B road than these cars. Let's say you want your sports car's roof to come off. Lots of people do. The 911 offers 3 different types of convertible. This one is the Targa, and the Cabriolet, the most common one, the rarest convertible 911 of them all, the Speedster. And on. There are classic 911s. There are resto mod 911s, like that beautiful Singer, with the look of a classic car and the performance of a modern one. There's even a 911 that thinks it's a rally car. And that's the point about this car. It's the stretchiest, most elastic, most versatile sports car there has ever been.
Then there are the limited edition cars, the 911Rs, the 911STs, the ones that rocket in value and stay there. Importantly, the 911 seems perfectly happy in all of these roles. Never does it feel like it's being asked to do something it can't do well.
I hope that explains why boring car people like me go on and on about the Porsche 911. Quite simply, there's no other sports car like it. So what have I missed about the 911? I haven't spoken about the way it looks. I haven't spoken about reliability. I haven't spoken about the 911 community. So tell me in the comments what I've got wrong, what I've got right. I know you will. And while I've got your attention, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.